Arcane recently came to an end, so I decided to check out Convergence, a League of Legends story, and unlock the Platinum Trophy. We traverse the sprawling city of Zaun as Ekko, a young inventor with a device to manipulate time. In this story-driven action platformer, we'll be unlocking a total of 54 trophies, ranging from gathering collectibles, meeting Jinx, and completing the game in under 6 hours. Our story starts off with Ekko navigating Zaun, when suddenly a spire in the city randomly explodes. With fire and debris spreading around the city, he wonders about his friend Lim, who he was supposed to meet. We encounter some chempunks who claim it's their area, and Ekko warns them about the danger of staying, but they decide to fight us. We successfully defeat them and find Lem stuck in the rubble. As we cross the bridge, it collapses and learn to rewind time by a few seconds. This allows Ekko to reverse any damage taken. It uses rewind charges. The amount of seconds that can be rewound at a time is limited by the rewind gauge. Shortly after, we're ambushed by more chempunks. However, Chrono Break allows us to shatter the timeline, returning to a more favourable point in time, and enemies near Ekko's afterimage take massive damage. Breaking Lem out of the rubble, he says that unfortunately Ekko's timewinder he borrowed has been stolen. As we make our way to find the culprit, we find our first chest with a rare part, and we'll need to be finding every chest for a few trophies. Finding the culprit who stole the timewinder, their armour is enhanced with orange crystals from the spire. Ekko asks if they are Hextech related, but they aren't usually orange. The culprit doesn't know nor really care, and all that matters is that it works, as they lunge towards us with their hammer. After successfully defeating them, we get the timewinder back, where Ekko throws a disc that expands into a time distortion field, damaging enemies caught inside, and after a delay, the timewinder rewinds back, dealing damage on its return. In addition, it can also be used to power sockets, allowing us to leave the room and go check on our friends, where we meet Red and Aximander, discussing the aftermath of the spire, and that the Poindextras are hiring people to do their dirty work, as well as guards from Piltover have been walking around. Ekko thinks he should check the spire himself, but first he wants to check his parents are okay. Before that, we also meet Ellie and Corin Revik, who is being harassed by a group of people. They've taken his clockwork figurines and hidden them all around Zaun, a set of collectibles between the two that will be needed for future trophies. We also meet Rungs, who hands us the grind plates and hook, allowing us to grind down rails at high speeds. On our way to the apartment, I'd unlock my first trophy, Time Heals All Wounds, for recovering 30 health by rewinding damage taken. Making it to the apartment, we encounter a mysterious stranger outside. Ekko questioning why they are here, and they ask for his help. But Ekko doesn't help people who hide in gardens or spy on his family. A fight ensues, and I'm able to use the timewinder to get the damage here and hit hard with the Chrono Break. After defeating the stranger, I unlock a trophy, and to my surprise, a spoiler before the game announces who the character is. Mysterious stranger. Defeat future Ekko in the courtyard. Did I just get spoiled by the trophy?
I'll take it.
I'm you. From the future.
Wait, what? I invent time travel? Why didn't you just say that? What are you doing here? Why'd you have a hood on?
Because it was raining. And because I wasn't sure if you would trust me.
Future Ekko is here to investigate the spire's collapse and wants Ekko's help. However, it is not a great time to talk as his parents return, and ask him to meet at the Warwick power plant in Factory Wood, where he'll explain everything. Ekko checks in on his parents who are safe from the spire's collapse, and that most of it fell into Factory Wood. I then unlock a trophy for looking at the family portrait in the apartment. We then pick up the magnetic souls, allowing Ekko to run on wall plates for a period. On our way to Factory Wood, we then see Vale Poindextra ordering people to look around Warwick and collect Syntixi. Future Ekko tells us about these Syntixi crystals. The regular Hextech crystals you see people use in Piltover are powerful, rare and expensive. They are very hard to come by in Zaun. Most of the Hextech trade in Piltover is controlled by Clan Feros, who are the ones who decided to try manufacturing a synthetic version in Zaun. This is where the Poindextras come in, one of the richest Chem Baron families, who often take on experimental projects, and it seemed like it might be a good partnership for Clan Feros. The Poindexters saw an opportunity. Instead of making synthetic crystals for Clan Veros, they used the resources to create their own lab-ripped compound called Syntixi. They're just as powerful, extremely unstable, and can explode without much warning. In the wrong hands, they could wipe out the city entirely. Clan Veros halted production as soon as word reached Piltover that they had been tricked, but it was too late. The Poindexters had made enough Syntixi to do anything they wanted. Future Ekko has come here on the day of the Spire collapse, in which inside of it was the Syntixi stash, now scattered all over the city. As the Poindexters and the Syntixi cause a lot of trouble in the future, Future Ekko wants Ekko's help to gather the Syntixi themselves before the Poindexters do, keeping the city safe from a devastating future. We explore the building and manage to find several Syntixi crystals, as well as unlock a trophy for defeating 3 enemies with a single chrono break, and another shortly after for defeating 3 enemies with a single Time Winder throw, before encountering Zaun Poindexter, who gives us the chance to leave, otherwise he'll pulverize us to smithereens. I'd use my new ability, Parallel Convergence, I had found. It allows Ekko to create a temporary circular field that slows any enemies, projectiles, or mechanical objects caught inside. As Zaun likes to fire a lot of projectiles, this would unlock our next trophy for using Parallel Convergence to simultaneously slow down 5 projectiles. One final hit with the Time Winder, I defeat Zaun and unlock another trophy. Future Ekko arrives and we tell him that Zaun has had all the Syntixi he collected lifted out of here. However, we need to leave as a group of Veros guards are in the building. As Zaun got away with most of the crystals, Future Ekko thinks he knows where he can get more before he does. However, Ekko would first like to check on his friends and gear. Checking in with Ekko's friends, Red is on her way to meet some new ones. The Inks, a group of people who have jam sessions around Zaun and put on shows, who are obsessed with Jinx, but just her style, not the blowing stuff up parts. Lem rescued a dog, Rung allows us to learn new combat skills, and Axamander tells us of these golden scrambots. They were invented by someone from old Zaun, whose purpose is to hide things as a portable vault, and when he died, they took all his treasure, which turns out to be lore pieces, as I had found one in Factory Wood. A parkour section like the Rayman Origins Tricky Treasures, we'll need to collect them all for a future trophy. Speaking of which, I decided to return to Factory Wood, as you're shown the percentage completion of an area on your map. I would find the final chest in the area and unlock a trophy. We then meet Future Ekko, who has done some calculations on the direction the Syntixi fell. Most of it went into Factory Wood, but a bunch of it would have fallen further into the sump. The sump is a dark place with many creatures, as well as a potential trophy we'll discuss later. We also encounter some bandits who the Poindexters must have hired, looking for Syntixi here too. I managed to unlock a trophy against one of them by getting hit by an attack, rewinding, then parrying the same attack. As we delve deeper around the pipelines and defeating bandits, we notice something very loud in the far distance and the environment begins to shake. Moving ahead, we'd encounter Drake Poindexter, who thinks Ekko is one of his subordinates. He tries to play it off to easily get Syntixi, but Drake ends up realizing who he is and a fight ensues. I unlock a trophy in this fight by first learning the parry ability from Rung, and then successfully parry an attack from a boss. I continue to use my parry attack on his grenades to defeat Drake for another trophy, which then nets me the phase drive, allowing Ekko to instantly teleport him to a target to perform a slash attack, as well as pick up the Syntixi Drake left behind. The phase dive allows me to teleport to these blue orbs in the environment, places that I couldn't originally reach, as well as deal with this annoying enemy that creates an energy barrier, which unlocks me a trophy by using phase dive to go through it. I'd also unlock 2 more trophies while finding the Syntixi, the first for catching a total of 4 scrambots, and the other for parrying enemy attacks a total of 50 times. After collecting the Syntixi, Future Ekko reckons it is enough and wants us to meet up. However, we unfortunately encounter Warwick. Despite running from the beast, he corners us into a fight. Warwick's attacks hit fast and strong, but our rewind is just enough to get through the fight, unlocking a trophy. Future Ekko arrives and urges Ekko to end Warwick, due to the chaos he does to Zaun in the future, but Ekko can't bring himself to. Future Ekko knows how he is feeling, but think about how many hundreds of people this beast has already harmed. One death here and thousands are going to be saved. Ekko knows he is dangerous, but there must be another way to handle it. However, more bandits appear and we escape. Ekko questions his future self that by him coming back in time, he's already interfered with the present, that he's changing him and himself just by being here, that he wanted him to kill Warwick. Future Ekko says that there are things that you'll have to do to be the person Zaun needs him to be, but Ekko doesn't know what happens in the future, but he doesn't want to be him. Future Ekko exclaims he is not an evil version of him, they're the same person. Ekko argues they're not the same and that he cares about the people as well as Zaun. Future Ekko decides to show him to help understand. He hands Ekko his chronoport to go in the future, where everything changed, and talk to his parents. The quick rundown is that Zaun is in a terrible state, covered in thick Zaun grey, which makes it incredibly difficult to breathe. The relationship between Piltover and Zaun is at its worst. His parents are planning on leaving Zaun indefinitely, as they're working harder than ever just to barely survive, and have packed their belongings. To their surprise, Ekko makes an appearance, as they never see him, never know where he is or when he'll be back, and the last time they talked, it didn't go well. Ekko wonders what Future Ekko done to their parents that made them want to move out of Zaun forever, the reason why he was sent to the future to fix. To stop their parents from leaving. He rewinds time several times trying to figure it out, before coming to the realization it is wrong to do so, and ultimately wishes them well in leaving. He rewinds back to the present to talk to Future Ekko, but before that, I unlocked 3 trophies. One for handing Ekko's mum a flower, the second for completing the lacuna, and the third for never fighting the Watcher. Future Ekko asks if he managed to convince them to stay, but Ekko says if they want to escape the war, he wasn't going to stand in their way. Future Ekko says you can't count on people to stay around, and he has to learn to do things for himself. Ekko says he has it backwards. They can make their own choices with it being about him. However, he argues they didn't get it, that he was out in Zaun every day trying to protect them, and am doing everything to make Zaun safe. It is the reason why he came back in time to stop the Poindexters from rising to power. Ekko says he should have believed in him when things got bad, but trying to control everyone around him isn't the way to do things. Ekko doesn't want that future for Zaun either, but he needs some time to think. Future Ekko mentioned that there's a shipment of Syntixi that the Poindexters are arranging, that he'll investigate while Ekko takes his time. We head back to the hideout to ask Axamander for his advice, but we first get several trophies, such as returning 6 Clockwork Champions to Corin, learning 5 skills from Rungs, then returning to the Sump to find one last chest to open every one in the Sump sewers. Finally, the trophy I briefly mentioned that I intended to originally get in my first visit to the area, called Wildlife Protection, and that is to complete the Sump sewers without defeating a single bat, grub or canker, which I thought I had done, but after some research and finding a Steam guide, it is said the trophy doesn't list 2 other creatures you cannot kill. In fact, you can just go back to the Sump after completing the area for the first time. As you have Phase Dive, it is incredibly easier to skip segments, and once you make it near the end without killing any of those creatures, it unlocks the trophy. Axamander recommends us to go to Karina Varaza's Cultivair to relax, who is one of the kinder Chem Barons in the city, but he wouldn't be surprised if she was involved in some shady business too. On our way there, I'd unlock a trophy for using the rope rails for a total of 180 seconds. We come across Zarkon, who wants to discuss an urgent matter with Karina, but she cannot talk right now. She tells him to leave and come back later. He asks his members to observe who goes in and out to discover whose side she's on. Ekko, realizing that Syntixi is involved, contacts Future Ekko about the situation, and there are Feros guards inside the Cultivair. While Zarkon and Karina in cahoots makes sense, but what does Karina and Clan Feros mean? Ekko also notices his friend Red and wants to make sure she's safe. Navigating through the Cultivair, we'd come across Karina and overhear her being interrogated by a Feros guard. She exclaims that Syntixi are Poindexter's invention, and she has nothing to do with them, though Feros knows about her chemical experiments and deal with Zarkon. While she agrees that is the case, she only ran tests, but it was so volatile she returned it. The captain doesn't believe her and urges her to speak up where the stash of Syntixi is before their intelligencer gets here. Ekko then finds a crate covered in Syntixi dust addressed to Drake and Vale Poindexter, meaning they have a lot of it. He contacts Future Ekko about the matter, and that after he checks on his friend, they should meet at the top of the Cultivair, where we meet Camille, the principal intelligencer of Clan Feros of Piltover. She knows that Ekko has a temporal manipulation device, as Clan Feros is the largest proprietor of Hextech technology. They track everything that goes in and out of their laboratories, including the lost crystal splinter in Ekko's Zero Drive. Wondering why they haven't come after him sooner, he's only been a mild distraction, but as he is now interfering with her agent's investigations of the Poindexter family, she's been sent to terminate his timeline. This fight was unique, as I needed to not use my Zero Drive to unlock an additional trophy. That meant perfecting my dodges and parries against Camille's fast lunges and entrapping ability. After several tries, I managed to defeat Camille for the 2 trophies. trophies. Future Ekko arrives, and she manages to deduct that he invented a way to go further back in time.
2 Echoes.
What? No, he's not.
It is plain to see you've managed to invent a method to go even further back in time, and have met up with your younger self.
She's good.
What are you looking for in your past?
Investigating Syntixi crystals.
Why are you telling her our plan?
Clan Pharos does not support the dangerous experimentation performed by the Poindexters. She has intends to put a stop to it. The Spire collapse was just one example of how dangerous Syntixi can be, and fears that they have further examples in store. Camille suggests that they should work together, and future Ekko agrees, leaving Ekko baffled. The Poindexters will be shipping a cache of Syntixi that is currently aboard the Chaincrawler. If we can intercept it, she'll seek out the remaining siblings. Ekko questions his future self as she is appealed to. Future Ekko acknowledges it, but she just gave them a good tip about the crystals. Alliances aren't bad, neither are they permanent, and that he'll contact Ekko after he's located the Chaincrawler. In the meantime, I unlock 2 trophies, one for finding and opening every chest in the Cultivair, and the other for unlocking 10 chromas and Z-trails at Ellie's shop. With the Chaincrawler located, future Ekko knows of a perfect way to dispose of the Syntixi, but he needs Ekko to gain controls at the front. Aboarding the train, we come across Drake and Vale, a 2-on-1 fight where they mostly hang around in the air, making my Time Winder very valuable in the fight, and eventually defeating both for a trophy. With the twins out of the way, it would unlock me a new ability, the Temporal Pulse, which allows Ekko to overclock the Zero Drive to let out a short burst of energy that knocks back and causes damage to any enemies around him. This would be tied to my next trophy, by defeating a total of 20 enemies with it, then unlocking every chest on the Chaincrawler. Meeting at the front of the train, future Ekko tells of his plan with the Syntixi, and that no one in Zaun is ever going to have to worry about it, as it isn't going to exist anymore, by destroying it all, as well as using it to destroy the biggest collection of Hextech crystals too. Detonated it halfway in Zaun, halfway in Piltover. It will take out all the ammunition that both sides have, and neither will be able to fuel an army to fight in a war. Ekko thinks it's great and all, but how will he avoid hurting innocent people in the explosion? Future Ekko says they cannot avoid it, but at least Syntixi will be gone forever and can't start a war. Ekko becomes enraged at the thought of it and refuses to hand over the Syntixi, leading towards a fight between the two, which ultimately leads to future Ekko knocking him out, unlocking my next trophy. After Ekko wakes up, future Ekko contacts him that he's sorry and that it had to happen to save the city. Heading back to the hideout, Corin wants to discuss the people who stole from him, the Inks, that they've been carrying big crates into the old Fenelon's theatre, and thinks they have got something bad planned. I would be unlocking 2 trophies in this upcoming area, the first for hitting a temporal pulse on an enemy, into parallel convergence, then phase diving them. The second trophy was more interesting, as I thought I'd mention the possibility of being one of the few people with this trophy before you're intended to get it. This large gap in Entresol was impossible to make, and I concluded that I would get an ability later to make the jump. However, this gadget I had crafted to upgrade the Zero Drive, which are basically a similar system to Hollow Knight's charms, gave me increased movement and attack speed for a short time after rewinding, allowing me to clear the jump, which allowed me to get the chest that contained the Inks chroma, and by equipping this then entering the theatre, I unlock the Fitting In trophy. The theatre begins to rapidly change and float into the sky. It was done by the Inks to get Jinx's attention, who also seems to be using Syntixi on her fans, and Ekko can't let her throw explosives at a bunch of innocents. I'd pick up a new ability while navigating through the theatre, the Snap Dash, allowing Ekko to quickly rev the Z drive to burst forward through the air, which meant I could get all the remaining chests in the area for another trophy. We eventually find Jinx, who has nothing to do with the show, that these copycats are stealing her thing and came by to make sure they give up on trying to be her. With a variety of weapons at her disposal, she rains down rockets from the sky, but with a temporal pulse I can slow at least some of them before landing the final blow for a trophy. With Jinx escaping, Camille asks Ekko if he can contact future Ekko, and he baits him into thinking Camille will kill him. Future Ekko must save himself. He still believes it is the only possible option to stop the war, with blowing up the Syntixi and Hextech crystals. He's tried multiple options, but nothing works. He only just needs a little more Syntixi to create the bomb, and proceeds to leave. With time left to still stop him, Ekko invites Camille to the hideout, who discovers future Ekko's secret headquarters within. As she analyzes his journal, she learns that this is future Ekko's last chance to stop the war, due to all the broken chronoports. He is running out of time, and is getting desperate. It is why he's willing to set off a bomb if it will stop the war. Ekko also learns that he has marked something by the August Fairgrounds, the Poindexter coat of arms where most likely the last stash of Syntixi is kept, and proceeds to the area while Camille stays to gather more intel. Before that, I unlock 2 trophies, one for learning 11 skills from rungs, and the other for finding and opening every chest in the entresol. We would go deep into the fairgrounds, contacting future Ekko that he is letting innocent people die. However, he says he's seen a lot of innocent people die already. A few city blocks is nothing in comparison. Ekko's shocked that he would ever grow up to justify something like that. Future Ekko has tried many times to make a difference and none of it did, until he figured it out when the spire collapsed and the Syntixi scattered. Ekko wants him to think about the present, but future Ekko still believes he's doing the right thing. Eventually, Sarkon will send his Syntixi forces to launch an attack on Piltover, Beros will retaliate, and then it all crumbles. It leads to the same point. If he destroys Syntixi and the Hextech crystals at the clock tower, which sits above Zaun and below Piltover, it's the best shot at peace. We pick up a few remaining trophies before reaching the finale, from crafting 10 gadgets at the workbench, finding and opening every chest in the fairgrounds, which leads to opening every chest in the game, as well as one last fight against Zarkon, when suddenly Warwick appears and chases us. Luckily, Camille manages to help us and get to the top of the clock tower, where we must engage with future Ekko alone, as he has set up a barrier. Trying to convince him one more time there are still other options, but it leads to an intense fight, leading to a tear in the timeline. Ekko finally manages to convince future Ekko there is another way, and he believes he may be right due to the tear in the timeline. He asks Ekko to rewind his zero drive to pull the fabric of the timeline further apart, creating a fissure for the Syntixi bomb, and it will be gone for good. Ekko, concerned that the larger it gets, it will suck in the entire clock tower. Future Ekko, knowing this, decides he'll seal it from the other side, ultimately sacrificing himself. With the barrier disabled, Camille arrives and they discuss the matter. Even though it was his future self, he isn't doomed to follow his fate. She also reassures him that the future of Syntixi is no longer possible, as her agents have captured what remains of the Poindexters and their crystal production. But Ekko is still concerned what will happen to him. Future Ekko is shown through the time fissure and releases the bomb. He then activates his chronoport, showing the other timelines in the League of Legends universe, from Arcane to Project, eventually seeing one with his parents. He sends one last message to Ekko, that he apologizes for everything and that Ekko doesn't have to become him. He can give his heart to the world and make it a better place, and if he can, forgive him. With the story finished, it is now time to focus on the remaining trophies, one being when we arrived at the clock tower. This was for exploring the entire map. 2 more would unlock after that final fight with future Ekko, one for defeating him and the other for doing so without any gadgets equipped. As I had everything obtained, I could return to the hideout to hand in all the chromas and Z trails to Ellie's shop, returning the 12 clockwork champions to Corin, and returning 8 Scrambot artifacts to Axamander. Remember when future Ekko asked Ekko to go to the future to convince his parents to stay? There are an additional 3 trophies here. The first was to fight the Watcher instead of talking to him, then choosing the other remaining flowers to give to his mum. The next trophy was a bit tedious, as I needed to get my currency up as I needed to craft every gadget in the game. As I already had all the components from finding and opening every chest, I had to grind money within the hideout. At the very top of this section has a bunch of enemies that sit there like spikes. In addition, one of the gadgets I already had would increase my currency gain, so I would kill these enemies with my time winder and then leave the area to the right. Then they would respawn upon entering, so after a considerable amount of time, I'd have enough money to craft all the gadgets. Our last 2 remaining trophies before the Platinum would be an entirely new playthrough. The first for completing the game without dying, the second for completing the game in under 6 hours. Luckily, you can just play on easy difficulty for these trophies. You get more health, and surprisingly the platforming is made easier. Look at the difference between this area in my first playthrough on Standard to the second. With that, I would clock just over 2 hours on this second playthrough, securing the last 2 trophies and the platinum. Done. That should be the platinum trophy. No time to waste. Complete the game in under 6 hours. Going to live forever. Complete the game without dying.
It's not up to you to fix the world all by yourself.
Platinum trophy. Earn all trophies for Convergence, a League of Legends story.